Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Star Wind, staring at the empty space where New Boston should have been. The colony planet floated dead in the void, its cities dark and cold. No ships moved around it. No signals came from the surface. Just silence. "Run the scans again," Jake told his science officer, a tall blue alien named Kex. "There has to be something." Kex worked at his station, long fingers dancing over the controls. His 4 eyes focused on the readings. "Nothing, Captain. No life signs, no power sources. The cities are empty shells." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. This was the 15th human world they had checked this month. All the same. All empty. The humans had simply vanished 50 years ago, leaving behind empty homes and cold machines. "Sir?" called Lieutenant Vera from communications. She was young. For a Zephyrian, her silver skin still bright with youth. "Admiral Carter wants to speak with you." The main screen flickered to life. Admiral Lisa Carter appeared, her weathered face serious. She commanded the largest fleet in the galaxy now, mostly Zephyrian ships with crews from a dozen different worlds. "Jake, what did you find at New Boston?" she asked. "Same as all the others," Jake replied. "Empty. No signs of struggle, no bodies. They just left everything behind and disappeared." Lisa nodded slowly. "I was afraid of that. The council is meeting. Tomorrow. They want to make it official." "Official? Humanity is extinct. We're going to divide up their old territories among the member species." Jake felt his stomach drop. He was one of the few humans left in the galaxy, born on a trade station far from human space when the Great Silence began. Most days, he felt, like he was searching for ghosts. "There has to be an explanation," he said. "People don't just vanish. 50 billion humans across hundreds of worlds don't just disappear." "The Council thinks they do," Lisa said. "The Korthak Empire already has mining crews on 6 former human worlds. The Villani Collective is setting up research stations on the old human science planets. Everyone wants their piece." After the call ended, Jake walked to his quarters. On his desk sat the only human artifact he owned, a small wooden box his grandmother had given him. Inside was a picture of Earth, the human home world, blue oceans and white clouds, green continents full of life. Earth had gone silent first. The Great Planetary Defense Grid had stopped responding. The massive space stations around Sol had gone dark. Then, world by world, the silence spread across human space like a disease. The next morning, Jake attended the council meeting by video link. The great chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime buzzed with activity. Representatives from 40 species sat in curved rows, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Ambassador Dale Foster of the Andromedan Union stood at the central podium. His people looked almost human, but taller and thinner, with silver hair and pale skin. "The motion before us is simple," Dale said. "Humanity has been missing for 50 years. Their worlds sit empty while the galaxy grows more crowded each day. Logic demands we put these resources to good use." Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. The Korthak representative, a massive creature covered in gray scales, thumped his tail on the floor in approval. The spider-like Weaver delegate clicked, her mandibles in agreement. But not everyone agreed. Dr. Alex Kumar rose from the observer section. He was human, like Jake, but much older. His hair had gone completely white during his 50-year search for answers. "Honored delegates," Alex said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "we cannot simply assume humanity is gone forever. There are too many questions, too many mysteries." "What mysteries?" asked the Korthak representative, his deep voice booming. "They expanded too fast, took too many risks. Their reckless terraforming probably caused some disaster that wiped them out." "Then where are the bodies?" Alex shot back. "Where are the wrecked ships? The destroyed cities?" "You don't lose 50 billion people without leaving traces." The debate went on for hours. species after species, stood to claim parts of human space. The Draken Confederacy wanted the fortress worlds. The peaceful Luminari requested the garden, planets. Even small species that had never left their home systems wanted pieces of the human empire. Jake watched it all with growing anger. These aliens spoke about his people like they were discussing old furniture to be divided up. They had forgotten that humans were more than just empty buildings and silent machines. Finally, the vote came. 43 species voted to divide human space. Only 3 voted against. The motion passed easily. As the council session ended, Jake met with Alex in a quiet cafe near the government district. The old scientist looked exhausted, his shoulders bent with 50 years of searching. "I found something last week," Alex said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "On New Dallas, the old mining world." "What kind of something?" Alex pulled out a small data pad and showed Jake a series of images. They showed the main mining facility on New Dallas, a massive complex that had processed rare metals from the planet's core. "Look at these scorch marks," Alex said, pointing to dark streaks on the metal walls. "I ran every test I could think of. This wasn't caused by any weapon I know. The energy signature is completely unknown." Jake studied the images. The marks looked like something had burned through solid steel like it was paper. But the edges were too clean, too precise for any normal fire or explosion. "There's more," Alex continued. "I found similar marks on 3 other worlds, always in the same pattern, always near communication centers and transport hubs." "What do you think it means?" "I think something attacked them, something we've never seen before. And I think the humans didn't die." Alex leaned closer. "I think they ran." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Ran where?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out for 50 years. Alex closed the data pad. "But I'm getting close. There are references in some old databases, mentions of experimental technology, projects that were classified at the highest levels." "What kind of projects?" "The kind that could move entire populations across impossible distances. The kind that could hide 50 billion people where no one would ever find them." Later that night, Jake stood in his ship's observation lounge, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his people might still be alive. Somewhere beyond the reach of the galaxy's sensors and ships, humanity might be waiting. His communication officer's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the Outer Rim. Long-range sensors have detected something unusual in the old Sol system." Jake hurried back to the bridge. On the main screen, sensor data showed the space around Earth's sun. Most of it looked normal, just empty space and dead planets. But there was something else. A distortion in space itself, like heat waves rising from hot ground. "What is it?" Jake asked. Kex studied his instruments. "Unknown, Captain. The distortion appears to be growing stronger. It's affecting local space in ways I've never seen before." Jake stared at the readings. After 50 years of silence, something was happening in human space, something that made the very fabric of reality ripple and bend. "Set course for the Sol system," he ordered. "Maximum speed." As the star wind jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The galaxy had spent 50 years assuming humanity was gone forever. But what if they were wrong? What if the humans hadn't died at all, but had simply gone somewhere else? And what if they were finally coming home? Commander Maya Rodriguez guided her salvage ship through the asteroid field that surrounded Gibraltar Station. The massive human fortress hung in space like a sleeping giant, its dark metal hull scarred by 50 years of cosmic dust and radiation. "Look at the size of that thing," whispered her pilot, a young Villani named Sek. His green skin had paled to almost white as they approached the station. How did humans build something so big? Maya had seen Gibraltar Station in old database files, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The fortress was over 20 kilometers long, bristling with weapon ports and shield generators. It had been humanity's greatest military stronghold, home to 500,000 soldiers and support staff. Launching scanner drones, announced Kip, her systems officer. The short, stocky Dracon had volunteered for this mission despite his people's general dislike of humans. Full-spectrum sweep of all sections. The drones spread out across the station's hull, their sensors probing every detail. Maya watched the results appear on her screens. The station was intact. No hull breaches, no signs of battle damage. The massive defensive weapons were still in perfect condition. "Any life signs?" Maya asked. "Nothing," Kip replied. "But all the power systems are still functional. Environmental controls are running. The air inside is still breathable." Maya felt a chill. An empty space station was one thing. An empty space station that was still running normally was something else entirely. "Take us to Docking Bay 7, she ordered. "Full environmental suits. No one goes anywhere alone." The docking bay doors opened smoothly as they approached, as if the station was welcoming them home. Maya's team of 12 specialists gathered in the airlock, checking their equipment one final time. Besides herself, Sek, and Kip, she had brought engineers, scientists, and security personnel from 6 different species. The station's corridors were well lit and warm. Their footsteps echoed off metal walls decorated with human artwork and motivational posters. Emergency lights blinked green, indicating all systems were normal. "This is wrong," muttered Zara, a ethereal scientist whose transparent body flickered with nervous energy. "Everything is too perfect, too normal." They made their way to the central command center, passing through sections that showed clear signs of recent habitation. In the crew quarters, beds were unmade. Personal belongings sat on desks and shelves. Family photos smiled from picture frames. In the mess hall, meals sat half-eaten on tables. Coffee cups still held cold liquid. A chess game was frozen mid-move, pieces scattered across the board as if the players had simply walked away. "It's like they just vanished in the middle of their daily routine," said Len, her security chief. The big Korthak kept his hand near, his weapon, though there was nothing to fight. The command center was the most disturbing of all. Duty stations were still active, displaying routine status reports. Personal items littered the desks, reading tablets, snack packages, small toys, and trinkets. A child's drawing was pinned to one console, showing a family standing in front of a house under a yellow sun. Maya approached the commander's station and activated the main computer. The screen flickered to life, showing the Gibraltar station, logo and a prompt for user identification. "Computer, identify last commanding officer," she said. "Admiral Roy Jackson, appointed Commander Gibraltar Station, service record." The computer began reciting a long list of the Admiral's accomplishments. "Computer, show last log entry." The screen changed to show a tired-looking human man in his 50s. Admiral Jackson had gray hair and kind eyes, but his face was creased with worry. The timestamp showed the recording was made 50 years and 3 days ago. "Personal log, Admiral Roy Jackson, Gibraltar Station," the recording began. "Day 3 of what intelligence is calling the contact event. We've lost communication with 17 colonies in the past 72 hours. The pattern is always the same. Normal communication, then nothing. No distress signals, no signs of attack. They just go silent." The team gathered around the screen, listening intently. This was the first direct evidence they had found of humanity's final days. "Earth Command has ordered all defensive stations to yellow alert," Jackson continued, "but I don't think this is a conventional attack. Our long-range sensors are picking up impossible readings from the affected systems. Space itself seems to be changing." The recording paused as Jackson looked at something off-screen. When he turned back, his face was pale. "We just received a priority message from the research station at Kepler Prime. Dr. Sarah Williams reports that several of her staff have experienced what she calls temporal displacement events. People walking through solid walls. crew members appearing in 2 places at once, equipment phases in and out of normal space. Maya felt her blood turn cold. She had heard legends of such things, stories told by ancient species about the early days of the galaxy. But they were myths, weren't they? "Computer, show next log entry," she commanded. A new recording appeared, time stamped 18 hours later. Jackson looked even more worried now. His uniform wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly. We've lost contact with Earth itself. The Sol System defense grid went offline 6 hours ago. No explanation, no warning. Admiral Peterson's entire fleet just disappeared while on patrol near Mars." Jackson rubbed his eyes, then looked directly at the recording device. "I'm beginning to think we're facing something beyond our understanding. The science teams are reporting reality distortions throughout human space, gravity wells that shouldn't exist, energy readings that violate known physics. It's as if the laws of nature themselves are breaking down." The recording ended abruptly. Maya tried to access the next entry, but the computer displayed an error message. "No further logs available," it announced in its calm, mechanical voice. "What happened to them?" whispered Sek. "Where did they go?" Maya didn't have an answer. She moved to another station and began searching through the station's databases. Most of the information was routine military data, but she found references to something called Project Deep Harbor. "Look at this," she called to the others. "There are dozens of classified files related to experimental technology, dimensional research. Something called quantum displacement theory." Zara floated over to examine the data, her energy form pulsing with excitement. "These readings are incredible. They were experimenting with folding space itself, creating gateways to other dimensions." "Is that even possible?" asked Kip. "For most species, no," Zara replied. "But humans always pushed boundaries others wouldn't cross. They took risks that seemed insane to the rest of us." Maya continued searching through the files. Deep Harbor appeared to be a joint project involving Earth's greatest scientists and military leaders. The goal was to create a failsafe for humanity, a way to evacuate the entire species if they faced extinction. "Here," she said, highlighting a section of technical data. "They built something called a void gate, a portal that could transport matter across dimensional barriers. According to this, they tested it successfully on a small scale." "Small scale?" Len asked. "They moved an entire moon from one star system to another, transported it to what they called parallel space, and brought it back 3 days later. The implications were staggering. If humans had perfected dimensional travel, they could have evacuated their entire civilization to another reality. They could be alive right now, just existing in a place where the galaxy's sensors couldn't detect them. "Computer, show location of Project Deep Harbor," Maya commanded. "Classified information. Command authorization required." Maya tried several override codes, but the computer refused to cooperate. However, she did find references to a research facility in the Outer Rim, near the edge of what had been human space. As they prepared to leave Gibraltar Station, Maya took one last look around the command center. Somewhere out there, 50 billion humans might still be alive. They might be waiting in another dimension, hoping someone would find them and bring them home. Back on her ship, Maya composed a priority message to Captain Morrison and Dr. Kumar. The galaxy had assumed humanity was dead, but the evidence suggested something far more incredible. The humans hadn't died in some disaster. They had built a door to another world and walked through it. The question now was whether that door could be opened again. And if it could, what would they find on the other side? A grateful human civilization ready to return home? Or something else entirely, changed by 50 years in a realm beyond normal space and time? As her ship departed Gibraltar Station, Maya looked back at the massive fortress. It sat in space like a monument to human ingenuity and determination. They had faced the impossible and found a way to survive. But survival and return were two different things. Somewhere in the space between realities, humanity was waiting. The galaxy just had to figure out how to bring them back. Deep beneath the crystal spires of the ethereal home world, Keeper Knox floated through the ancient archives. His energy form pulsed with concentration as he searched through records that hadn't been accessed in thousands of years. The news from Gibraltar Station had troubled him deeply, and he needed to find answers in the oldest texts. The ethereal archives contained knowledge from civilizations that had lived and died before most current species had even developed writing. Knox had spent 3 centuries as a keeper, but even he had never ventured into the deepest sections where the most dangerous knowledge was stored. His search led him to a vault sealed with warnings in 50 different languages. The warnings all said the same thing. The knowledge within was too dangerous for most minds to comprehend. Knox hesitated, then broke the seal with his authority codes. Inside, floating in a field of protective energy, was a single crystalline data core. The crystal was black as deep space, with veins of silver light running through it like captured lightning. As Knox touched it, information flooded his consciousness. The text was written in Old Galactic, a language that had been dead for 10,000 years. But the content made his energy form flicker with terror. "The Watchers beyond the veil," he read aloud, his voice echoing in the empty vault. "Entities that exist in the spaces between dimensions. They feed not on matter or energy, but on consciousness itself. They hunger for the thoughts and dreams and memories of living beings." The text described a cycle that repeated throughout galactic history. Every few thousand years, the Watchers would break through the barriers between dimensions. They would consume entire civilizations, leaving behind empty worlds and hollow shells of once living beings. But this time, something had gone wrong with their feeding cycle. The text mentioned a species that had discovered the Watchers' approach and found a way to escape. A species that had built doors between realities and fled to safety in parallel space. Knox felt a chill run through his energy form. The description matched what Commander Rodriguez had found at Gibraltar Station perfectly. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison's ship reached the edge of the old Sol system. The space around Earth's sun looked normal at first glance, but their sensors detected the same dimensional distortions that Dr. Kumar had reported. "There," pointed Chief Engineer Pete Collins, a stocky human with grease-stained coveralls. 2 degrees off the starboard bow. That's not natural." Morrison looked at the main screen. Space itself seemed to ripple like water, bending light in impossible ways. Through the distortion, he could see the faint outline of something massive, floating in the void. "Take us closer," he ordered. "But carefully. If that thing is what I think it is, we don't want to get too close." As they approached, the shape became clearer. It was a ship, but unlike anything in the galactic databases. The hull was sleek and dark, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was easily 3 kilometers long, dwarfing even the largest battleships in the current galactic fleet. "It's human," whispered Morrison, "but the design is wrong. Too advanced, like someone took human technology and pushed it centuries into the future." Pete ran detailed scans of the vessel. "It's called the Valiant," he reported. "Earth Defense Force markings, but the hull composition is impossible. It's made of materials that shouldn't exist." "Any life signs?" "Negative, but there's still power in some sections. Minimal, but enough to support basic systems." Morrison made his decision. "We're going aboard. Pete, you're with me. Full environmental suits and portable life support." The Valiant's airlocks still functioned, though they moved with an eerie silence. Inside, the corridors were dark, except for occasional emergency lighting. The walls were covered with a strange, metallic substance that seemed to shift and flow when observed directly. They made their way to the bridge, passing through sections that defied normal physics. In one corridor, the ceiling and floor had switched places. In another, Doorways led to rooms that were clearly bigger inside than the ship's hull could accommodate. The bridge was a marvel of advanced technology. Control stations floated in midair, operated by thought rather than touch. Holographic displays showed star charts of regions that didn't exist in normal space. At the captain's station, they found a recording device still functioning after 50 years. Morrison activated it, and the image of a woman in her 40s appeared. Captain Helen Ross had short brown hair and tired eyes, but her voice was steady and professional. Captain's log, Earth Defense Ship Valiant. The recording began. We've been running for 6 days now, but I don't think distance matters to these things. They exist outside normal space. They can reach us anywhere in this dimension. Morrison and Pete exchanged glances. The recording continued. Dr. Martinez believes the creatures are what ancient texts call the Watchers. They've been dormant for millennia, but something has awakened them. They're not physical beings in any sense we understand. They exist as pure hunger, pure need. They consume consciousness itself. The recording flickered, showing distortions in the image that resembled the spatial anomalies they had observed outside. We've lost 3 crew members to phase displacement. They walked through solid walls and simply vanished. Chief Murphy reported seeing them later in impossible locations, but when we investigated, nothing was there. It's as if reality itself is breaking down around us. Ross paused, looking at something off-screen. When she turned back, her face was pale with fear. The Watchers are getting closer. We can feel them pressing against the barriers of normal space. Earth Command has authorized Project Deep Harbor. All human colonies are being evacuated to parallel dimensions using the Void Gate network. Morrison felt his heart race. A network of dimensional gateways. Humanity hadn't just built one escape route, they had built dozens. The evacuation is proceeding faster than expected, Ross continued. Entire worlds are being transported to safety, but the process is unstable. We're not sure the dimensional anchors will hold. If they fail, we might be trapped forever in parallel space. The recording ended abruptly, replaced by static. Morrison tried to access other files, but most of the ship's memory banks had been wiped clean. However, Pete found something in the engineering section, a set of coordinates buried deep in the navigation computer. They pointed to a location on the very edge of human space near a dead star system called Omega Centauri. That must be where the main Void Gate is located, Pete said, the control center for the entire network. As they prepared to leave the Valiant, Morrison noticed something disturbing. The strange metallic substance on the walls had begun to move, flowing toward them like liquid mercury. Where it touched their environmental suits, the material began to change color. "We need to go," Pete said urgently. "Now!" They ran for the airlock, but the ship seemed to fight them. Corridors stretched longer than they should. Doorways led to rooms they had never seen before. It was as if the Valiant existed partially in normal space and partially somewhere else entirely. They barely made it back to their ship before the Valiant began to fade from normal space. The massive vessel became translucent, then disappeared entirely, leaving only empty space and the lingering distortions in reality. Back on their ship, Morrison sent an encrypted message to Admiral Carter and Dr. Kumar. The evidence was overwhelming now. Humanity had discovered an ancient threat called the Watchers and had evacuated their entire civilization to parallel dimensions to escape. But the evacuation had been desperate and rushed. The dimensional anchors were unstable. Humanity might be trapped in space between realities, unable to return home even though the immediate threat had passed. The galaxy had spent 50 years dividing up human territories and resources. They had assumed humanity was extinct and had moved on with their lives. But somewhere in the void between dimensions, 50 billion humans were waiting for rescue. The question was whether the galaxy would help them return, or whether political and economic interests would leave humanity stranded forever in the space between worlds. Morrison set course for Omega Centauri. If there were answers to be found, they would be at the location the Valiant's computers had revealed. But as his ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. In the space around them, reality rippled and bent in ways that defied explanation. The Watchers might be dormant, but they were not, gone. And humanity's return might wake them from their 50-year sleep. The galaxy was about to discover that some doors, once opened, could never be fully closed again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted in chaos the moment Dr. Kumar finished presenting his findings. Representatives from 40 species shouted at each other in a dozen different languages, their voices echoing through the grate. "Chamber on Nexus Prime." "This is impossible!" roared General Thrak of the Korthak Empire, his massive scaled fist pounding on his desk. "Humans cannot simply hide in other dimensions. Our scientists would have detected such technology decades ago." Senator Grace Murphy stood at the Human Observer section, her voice carrying despite her small stature. "The evidence is clear. My people didn't die. They found a way to escape a threat none of us understood. They deserved the chance to come home." But her words were drowned out by angry responses from species who had grown comfortable with expanded territories. The Volani Collective had built 17 major research installations on former human worlds. The Draken Confederacy had established military bases on the old human fortress planets. Millions of alien colonists, now called former human space, their home. Ambassador Dale Foster of the Andromedan Union called for order, but the debate continued to rage. Even if humans are alive somewhere, he argued, they abandoned their territories. Under galactic law, abandoned worlds become available for colonization after 50 years of silence. "They didn't abandon anything," Dr. Kumar shot back. "They were forced to flee for their lives. Would you condemn your own people to eternal exile to protect your mining operations?" The argument might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an urgent message from the Outer Rim. Captain Ben Torres of the exploration vessel Horizon had been monitoring the coordinates found aboard the Valiant. His face appeared on the main council screen, beamed in from the edge of human space. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. "Council members," Torres said, his voice tight with stress. "You need to see this. The dimensional distortions around Omega Centauri have increased by 300% in the past 12 hours. Something big is happening out here." The screen changed to show sensor readings from the dead star system. Space itself writhed and twisted around a point of absolute darkness. Energy readings spiked beyond anything in the galactic databases. "It's like reality is tearing apart," Torres continued. "My science officer thinks something is trying to break through from the other side." The council chamber fell silent. Even the most aggressive species representatives stopped their arguments to stare at the impossible readings. Keeper Knox materialized in the chamber, his energy form flickering with urgency. "Honored delegates, I have studied the ancient records. What you see is the activation of a dimensional gateway. Something is coming through from parallel space." "The humans?" asked Senator Murphy hopefully. "Possibly," Knox replied. "But after 50 years, we cannot know what they have become. Exposure to parallel dimensions changes living beings in unpredictable ways." General Thrak leaned forward, his yellow eyes gleaming. "If humans have developed dimensional technology, the Korthak Empire demands immediate access to it. Such power cannot be allowed to remain in the hands of a single species." "The Volani Collective agrees," added Director Prime Zan, her insect-like features clicking with agitation. "Dimensional manipulation could revolutionize our understanding of physics. It must be shared with the galactic scientific community." But other species had different concerns. The peaceful luminary worried about the military applications of such technology. The ancient ethereals feared that meddling with dimensional barriers could attract the attention of things better left undisturbed. As the debate raged, Captain Morrison arrived at Omega Centauri aboard the Starwind. What he found there defied all expectations. The dead star system contained the remnants of the largest construction project in galactic history. Massive ring structures surrounded the dying star, each one kilometers in diameter. They were clearly human in design, but incorporated technology far beyond anything in the current galactic databases. "It's a dimensional gateway network," reported Morrison's science officer Kex, his 4 eyes wide with amazement. "These rings can create stable portals to parallel space. The power requirements alone should be impossible." "How many rings are there?" Morrison asked. 217, Kex replied. "Each one calibrated for a different dimensional frequency. They could transport entire fleets to parallel realities." But the most impressive sight was at the center of the network. A massive space station, larger than Gibraltar Station, hung in the gravity well of the dead star. It pulsed with energy drawn directly from the stellar core, channeling unimaginable power into the dimensional rings. "Captain," called his communications officer, "we're receiving a signal from the station. It's automated, but it's addressing us by name." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of an advanced command center. A holographic figure appeared, a middle-aged human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "Greetings, Captain Morrison," the hologram said. "I am Dr. Elizabeth Kane, Director of Project Deep Harbor. If you are receiving this message, it means someone has finally found our gateway network." Morrison felt a chill. The timestamp on the recording showed it was made only hours before the Great Silence began. "By now, you know about the Watchers," Dr. Kane continued. "Ancient entities that feed on consciousness itself. They have awakened from their millennial sleep, and they hunger for the thoughts and dreams of every living being in this galaxy." The hologram paused, looking directly at Morrison through the screen. "Humanity has made a terrible choice. Rather than fight a battle we cannot win, we are abandoning this dimension entirely. Every human world, every space station, every ship in our fleet is being transported to parallel space through this gateway network." The implications were staggering. Not just evacuation, but the movement of entire civilizations across dimensional barriers. "The process is dangerous and untested on this scale," Kane admitted. "We don't know if the dimensional anchors will hold. We don't know if we'll ever be able to return. But the alternative is extinction for every thinking being in the galaxy." The recording showed views of the evacuation in progress. Entire planets surrounded by massive energy fields, slowly fading from normal space. Fleets of ships disappearing into dimensional rifts. The systematic removal of human civilization from reality itself. "If we succeed, we will try to find a way back," Kane concluded. "But if we fail, remember us as we were. Remember that we chose exile over surrender. And if the Watchers ever return, learn from our example. Sometimes survival means letting go of everything you hold dear." The recording ended, leaving Morrison and his crew in stunned silence. Humanity hadn't just escaped to parallel dimensions. They had evacuated their entire civilization, taking their planets with them. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council received Morrison's report with a mixture of awe and terror. The scale of what humans had accomplished was beyond anything the galaxy had imagined possible, but the political implications were even more complicated now. If humans had taken their planets with them, did other species have any legal claim to human space at all? And if humanity returned, would they demand compensation for 50 years of occupation? "This changes everything," declared Senator Murphy. "My people didn't abandon their territories. They temporarily relocated them to another dimension. Every colony world, every space station that was supposedly empty, was actually moved to safety." General Thrax's response was predictably aggressive. "If humans return with such technology, they will pose a threat to galactic stability. The Korthak Empire cannot allow one species to possess such overwhelming advantages." "Perhaps," suggested Keeper Knox, his energy form pulsing thoughtfully, "we should focus on the more immediate question. The dimensional barriers are weakening. Something is trying to break through from parallel space. The question is whether it's humanity returning home or something else entirely. As if in answer to his words, alarms began sounding throughout the council chamber. Priority messages flooded in from observation stations across the galaxy. The dimensional distortions around Omega Centauri had suddenly intensified beyond all previous measurements. On the main screen, Captain Torres's face appeared again, but this time he looked terrified. "Council members," he said, his voice shaking. "Something's coming through. Multiple contacts, massive energy signatures. Whatever the humans built over there, it's finally opening." The council members fell silent, staring at the readings that showed reality itself, bending and twisting around. The dimensional gateway. After 50 years of silence, something was finally returning from the space between worlds. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for whatever emerged from the void. The first ship to break through the dimensional barrier was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It materialized slowly, as if reality was reluctant to accept its existence. The vessel was sleek and dark, its hull covered in the same geometric patterns they had seen on the Valiant. "It's definitely human," reported Torres, his voice filled with wonder and fear. "But the design is completely different, more advanced, like they've had 50 years to develop technology we can't even imagine." More ships followed the first, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They emerged from the dimensional rift in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with an inner light that seemed to bend. The dimensional rift tore open like a wound in space itself during the middle of the Galactic Council's emergency session. Every sensor in the galaxy screamed warnings as reality bent and twisted around the Omega Centauri system. Then the first human ship emerged from the void. The Earth destroyer Nemesis materialized slowly, its dark hull scarred by energies that didn't exist in normal space. Battle damage covered its surface, but the weapons that had caused it were unlike anything in galactic databases. The ship's very presence made nearby space ripple like disturbed water. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, staring at the screens that showed her home dimension for the first time in 50 years. Her crew was silent, taking in the reality they had fought so hard to return to. "Communications. Broadcast on all frequencies," Hayes ordered. "This is Captain Linda Hayes of the Earth Defense Force ship Nemesis. We are returning to our home dimension after 50 years in parallel space. We demand to know what has happened to human territories in our absence." The response came from Captain Torres aboard the Horizon. His voice was shaky with excitement and fear. "Captain Hayes, this is Captain Ben Torres of the Galactic Exploration Ship Horizon. Welcome home. The galaxy believed humanity was extinct." Hayes felt anger surge through her. Extinct. While they had been fighting for survival in dimensions where the laws of physics changed daily, the galaxy had written them off as dead. "Extinct?" she replied, her voice cold. "Prepare for fleet emergence. The Earth Defense Force is coming home." The dimensional rift widened, and more ships began to pour through. The massive dreadnought Liberty led a formation of battleships that made the largest galactic vessels look like toys. Admiral Frank Stone commanded from the Liberty's bridge, watching as his fleet took positions around the dimensional gateway. 50 years. Stone muttered to his tactical officer, Commander Lisa Brooks. 50 years, and they just gave up on us. "Sir," Brooks replied, "long-range sensors show extensive alien presence in our former territories. Multiple species have established colonies and military installations throughout human space." Stone nodded grimly. He had expected this, but seeing the reality was still painful. "Open a channel to the galactic government. It's time they learned what humanity has become." His transmission reached the council chamber on Nexus Prime, where representatives from 40 species watched in stunned silence as the human fleet continued to emerge from the dimensional rift. "People of the galaxy," Stone began, his weathered face appearing on screens across known space. I am Admiral Frank Stone of the Earth Defense Force. Humanity has returned from exile. We have spent 50 years in parallel dimensions, and we have learned much about the nature of reality itself. General Thrak of the Korthak Empire stood immediately, his scaled features twisted with rage. The territories you abandoned belong to the Korthak Empire now. You have no legal claim to worlds that have been silent for 50 years. Stone's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Abandoned? We were driven from our homes by entities that feed on consciousness itself. We chose exile over extinction. And now we have returned with the knowledge needed to defend not just ourselves, but this entire galaxy. The transmission showed views of the human fleet, and the council members could see that these were not the same ships humanity had possessed 50 years ago. The vessels seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else, flickering between dimensions like living things. Dr. Alex Kumar, who had spent 50 years searching for his people, stood in the observer section with tears in his eyes. Admiral Stone, this is Dr. Alex Kumar. I never stopped looking for you. I knew humanity couldn't simply vanish. Stone's expression softened slightly. Dr. Kumar, your research helped guide us home. The dimensional anchors you theorized about were the key to our survival, but the reunion was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the council chamber. Something else was emerging from the dimensional rift, something that made reality itself scream in protest. The city ship New Earth broke through the barrier between dimensions, and its appearance silenced every argument in the council chamber. The massive vessel was over 50 kilometers long, a mobile world that housed 3 billion human refugees. Its hull was covered in parks and cities, artificial suns providing light to millions of inhabitants. President Carol Washington appeared. On the main screen, her presence commanding immediate attention. She was older than the record showed, her hair completely white, but her eyes burned with determination. I am President Carol Washington, leader of the human colonial government in exile, she announced. We return not as supplicants begging for our old homes, but as equals demanding our rightful place in the galaxy. The scale of what was emerging from the dimensional rift was staggering. Not just ships, but entire space stations, mobile habitats, and structures that defied conventional understanding of engineering. Humanity hadn't just survived their exile, they had thrived. How many people? Whispered Senator Grace Murphy. Her voice filled with wonder. Current population stands at 47 billion, Washington replied. We lost 3 billion during the transition to parallel space. But the survivors have built a civilization beyond anything we possessed when we left. General Thrak's response was predictably aggressive. The Korthak Empire will not yield established territories to returning refugees. If humanity wants their old worlds back, they can fight for them. The words had barely left his mouth when every Korthak ship in the system simply disappeared. One moment they were there, the next they had vanished completely from normal space. Where did they go? Demanded Thrak, his voice rising to a roar. Admiral Stone's image appeared calm and composed. They have been temporarily relocated to a pocket dimension. They are unharmed, but they will remain there until this discussion is concluded peacefully. The demonstration sent shockwaves through the council chamber. Humanity had returned with the ability to manipulate space and time itself. They could make entire fleets disappear without firing a single shot. This is what we learned in our exile, Stone continued. The Watchers that drove us away exist in the spaces between dimensions. To fight them, we had to learn to exist there as well. We mastered technologies that most species consider impossible. Dr. Kumar found his voice first. The scorch marks I found on abandoned human worlds. They were from the Watchers, weren't they? Yes, Stone confirmed. The Watchers consume consciousness itself. They turn living beings into empty shells, drained of everything that makes them who they are. We barely escaped their first assault. President Washington took over the transmission. But escape was only the beginning. In parallel space, we encountered civilizations that had learned to fight the Watchers. We formed alliances, shared knowledge, and developed defenses that can protect entire galaxies from their hunger. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had become the galaxy's first line of defense against a threat most species didn't even know existed. The dimensional barriers are weakening, Washington continued. Our return has accelerated the process. The Watchers know we're back, and they're stirring from their dormancy. This galaxy has perhaps months before they break through in force. Keeper Knox materialized in the council chamber, his energy form flickering with urgency. The ancient texts speak of such times. When the barriers thin, all realities converge. We must unite or face extinction. Ambassador Dale Foster of the Andromedan Union finally found his voice. What do you propose? Alliance, Stone replied simply. Humanity will share our defensive technologies, but we need the galaxy's resources and cooperation. The Watchers cannot be fought by any single species. General Thrak, still fuming about his missing ships, crossed his massive arms. And if we refuse? Stone's expression didn't change, but space around the dimensional rift began to ripple ominously. Then you will face the Watchers alone, and you will lose. The choice facing the galaxy was stark. Accept humanity's return and their leadership in defending against an incomprehensible threat, or maintain the status quo and face extinction when entities from beyond reality came calling. As the council members debated, more human ships continued to emerge from the dimensional rift. Each one represented technology and capabilities that could revolutionize galactic civilization or destroy it utterly. Humanity had returned home after 50 years in exile, but they had not returned as the same species that had left. They had become something new, something adapted to survive in the spaces between realities. The galaxy would have to decide whether that transformation made them humanity's salvation or its greatest threat.